right, so we're going to call the meeting to order, and we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone to another night. We have just a couple quick orders of business. So if anyone had a chance to look at the minutes, you have them here printed by you. Were there any adjustments to the September 26th meeting minutes? Yes.
I saw a typo.
A typo, okay.
Yeah, in the members present.
Vice.
Did you catch that one? Okay.
I just saw.
Okay.
All right.
Make sure you got it.
Anything else? No? Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make it
For a second. All right, all in favor of the minutes? Yeah, okay, very good. And the attendance was on that. And then, so we did carry some of our guests were not able to come to the other meeting. We kind of split them up just a little bit, which I think was really great. So we have some guests here. So if we could go around really quickly and just introduce ourselves, especially for our guests, because they might not know all of us. So President Yoho, you want to start on that side?
Sure. I'm Karen Yoho, President of the Board of Ed.
Ray Gallagher, Vice President of the Board of Ed.
Ken Kerr, delegate from District 3.
April Miller, Delegate District 4.
Alex Donahue, Executive Director of the IAC, here in a support role.
Michael Dannenberg, Commissioner of IAC.
Katie Nash, Alderwoman for the City of Frederick.
John Miller, Burgess of Middletown.
Janice Spiegel, Special Projects and Budget, Special Projects Manager in the Budget Office, but I'm here representing County Executive Fitzwater.
Karen Lewis Young, Senator, District 3.
And the infamous.
Sorry, Paul Lebo, Public Schools, here in support as well.
Kira Bender, and I work for Delegate April Miller.
And Kira's taking our minutes this evening. Thank you,
These are other
Kira.
mayors.
A Burgess is like a mayor, and then the alderwoman for.
City Council.
Okay.
Yeah, of
okay.
City of Frederick. So City of Frederick has a mayor and then a whole council.
Okay.
Which is our aldermen or.
But we're switching in
You
December.
are changing
As
over.
soon as possible, I will not use that term anymore.
It's a bit confusing, so, okay, very good. And so we just wanted to kind of invite you guys and try to talk through a little bit of the issues. One of the things that we're trying to do with this work group is to bring everyone on to kind of the same page of what we're facing. And we can get you all of the information that we've had at previous meetings, especially around the difficulties we've had with the growth in Frederick County. We are very lucky that we are growing and we are a fabulous, amazing place to live, but it is definitely causing us some challenges, particularly in our school overcrowding and in our need to renovate some of our old schools. And so that was why we wanted a work group that kind of brought everything together and have brought all ideas of trying to get funding, because as you'll see from, if you guys, welcome to stay for the whole meeting, Paul is going to share kind of some of the overall state of where we're at, as is Alex has a little bit to touch on with that as well. So we just kind of wanted to get your feedback of where you saw things and kind of give our perspective of what we've been kind of talking about. So would either one of you like to go first?
So thank you. I was aware of the meetings. I had some notes being provided to me from the audience, so I have been following very closely. But just really appreciate the work that you all are doing. I just wanted to convey personally that I do believe, and I think I represent the sentiment from our small group piece of this, that the city does share a partnership opportunity to try to work towards some of the solutions that we know that we need to. To that end, in December of 2023, that's incredible, we had a wonderful presentation from Dr. Lebo and his team about basically alternative school designs. As part of the discussion, obviously there's no panacea, and I'm wouldn't want to circumvent any of the work that's being done, but just did want to volunteer and share that that presentation is available. I'll make sure that the link is provided, and I'm sure Dr. Lebo can answer any questions, but they were already way ahead. We had asked that they come in and sort of present to us this concept of what an urban school looks like. Of course, I live in the city, so I'm a little bit more pro on the urban school side, but we've also workshop names with Councilmember Carter to call it compact school design, because obviously, you know, land in Frederick County is going to be problematic anywhere we go, and certainly in some of the geographical boundaries and things like that, or the mountains that other folks have that we don't necessarily experience, but just different things that might constrict school construction sites. So we have started a work group. Councilmember Carter is the chair from the county side. I'm the chair from the city side. And what we're doing is we're working through some of the issues that have been identified from the city and county processes, from our planning processes, the land use issues, that we can change that would make it easier for FCPS to move forward with these sites. So it gets very granular very quickly, but we're trying our best to sort of record these works, and then when we get to the point, making like text amendment changes to our land management codes so that we can facilitate those changes and just make it easier for the process. But that's the work that we did. And I also just wanted to mention, we did have a school mitigation fee conversation yesterday in our boardroom. I'm personally committed to raising that fee. We have not raised it recently, and it's desperately needed, I think, as part of the conversation. So there are things that I think that we can do on the municipality side to support the work that you all are doing. We'll keep you in the loop on this.
That's great. That's very good to hear. Now, and with the land use, are you looking at, when you're talking about change, and I know it's probably too early to speak of, are you talking about when you get a site proffered for development, like what that will then mean for that surrounding area, looking at just overall impact and things like that?
Excellent question, Madam Chair. So I think the context of our discussion has revolved more around difficult school sites that they're not necessarily traditional. Obviously, in the city of Frederick, we're not going to have those many opportunities for the open green space that makes a perfect school site, right? So what are the considerations that we need to consider if we wanted to rezone a commercial space to be, you know, an institutional zoning to allow for these? What are those considerations that we need to make sure, because time is money, obviously, even for FCPS, not just for private developers. So how can we fast track, make considerations for parking? And you know, we're just in the beginning stages, and so, you know, we had our education commission come and present or have discussion about what early concerns, right? So what does recreation look like in an urban setting? Luckily, we have folks who have done this before, and they have figured this out, so we're feeling like we can as well, but we definitely are in the early stages, and all feedback is welcome, and everyone is certainly invited. I know everybody needs more meetings on their calendar, but we do meet, we meet every 2 weeks on Friday, but we do meet virtually, so certainly I'll make that available if anyone would like to attend.
That would be great. Thank you. And then, you know, the charter schools especially have been,
That's right.
yes, very much so.
You have a lot of charter schools.
Not in the city of Frederick. Couple.
We have two, yeah, we have 4 total, but
Two's in the
are
city.
we in the city? 2 are in the city?
Yes, 2 are in the city, sorry.
The one moved out,
Carroll Creek's in the county, they're out.
That's technically Carroll, okay.
And then Moxie and Frederick Classical are in city limits.
Yeah, but they are in, 2 of them are in industrial settings, or is it 3 now?
One is in
I
a,
don't know what you want to call it. What setting?
one is in a limited
Let's
industrial.
call it an urban setting.
One is in a, what you would consider to be a traditionally commercial office building. But the city actually did a rezoning, or changed their text amendment, and so it's now a permitted use. So where Monocacy Valley Montessori purchased on Thomas Johnson Drive, as you look at it, might appear as if it's in a commercial building, but it is an approved use by right in that zone. So that was a change that they made to their text amendment. And Alderwoman Nash, thank you for your memory. I just shared the link. You said the date, and I went right to it, so we'll include the link for the joint meeting. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. All right, Burgess Miller.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. You get the city versus the small town. We're not quite, our educational commission has not yet been formed, nor will it ever be, I don't think. We don't really deal with educational issues. We deal with them from the standpoint of providing land for public facilities. We've found the land through development for the current library, as well as for our fire station, and we helped to negotiate the deal for the primary school where that sits as well. So we've tried to really be good stewards in getting land, and we have land reserved also for our future senior center as well. So that's where we come in our perspective, what we can do for schools and what we can do for providing space and land for those schools. We also have, at this point, we don't have anything dedicated specifically for schools, but we do have, I believe, either the highest or the second highest tap fee, $25,000 that we charge for, it's each house. It's a $9,000 water tap fee, sewer fee, and then $7,000 improvement fee. So we charge that, and to the developer, that goes in, of course, right through the cost of the home. But it is additional revenue stream for us. And we have a downtown revitalization zone, in which we take steps to mitigate those fees so that we can encourage infill development. Specifically, what are we doing for schools? I don't really have any concerns about that. We're dealing with a new school right now. We have first co-located school coming in Frederick County, coming to Middletown, with our elementary and middle school combined together. And we have, our planning commission has been moving that through. So we're in the design phase of that. We're waiting for a site plan for formal approval. We have conditional approval at this point. So it's been going well. Some of our residents aren't too happy with some of the things on the school property. I know it's hard to believe, but they have some valid concerns, and I think FCPS has taken some steps to address those. The town has tried to, through our planning commission, to also make sure that they get addressed as well. But we have also probably some of the oldest schools in Frederick County. Our middle school was built in '53. It's been renovated at least twice that I know of. I went to that school as a high school student, 7 through 12, and then taught at that school. So I'm very familiar with that building. And so, it went renovation in '57 and maybe '97. Don't quote me on the date on '97, but the '57 I'm pretty sure of. And then, of course, our high school is 50 years old. Began operation in '74. And then the elementary school shortly thereafter. So they're both circling on 50 years of service. The high school was built as an open school. It's been basically renovated into a closed classroom school. The elementary school was built as an open school and largely remains an open school.
Still open.
Yeah, and it's, if you have never been in that school, I would encourage you to go there. You open the doors and the buzz of noise is just unbelievable. And the test scores that come out of there, I don't know how they do it. But our teachers are fantastic, and they get results. But I don't know how. Because if you go then to the high school or even the middle school, the noise level is just, 50%, 75% less, just because of everything that's going on. And hearing teachers teach all across the building, it's amazing. But those are very old schools. And of course, the middle school and elementary school will be replaced with this co-located school, and then our high school, is on that list of the 60% threshold. It's up there on that. So I think it might be 61%, if I'm not mistaken. So actually, it might be higher than that. It might be 69, I think.
I think it's 65, but yes,
65,
it is,
okay.
yes.
55. So I think that high school, it's caught in this whole funding issue of where's the money going to come from to either replace or renovate. And, I heard some conversation the other day about, a pool. We have one of two pools left in the county. Everybody wants the pool. I mentioned to Dr. Lebo when he was out one time when we were talking, and my suggestion was build an outdoor pool, and then in the wintertime put a bubble over it. It's cheaper than building an indoor pool. And maybe in the summertime you have YMCA or somebody else run that pool for you. So there are some options to still have a pool, but not build it within the building itself. And yet you can also then get a benefit for the community. And our primary school, of course, is also a shared facility with Frederick County Parks and Recreation. So that's been a very successful prototype of that arrangement. So that's all I really had to offer if you have any questions. I mean, as far as it goes for the town of Middletown.
Yeah, so they went with the primary school model where when they have it's the K through 2, and then the elementary school now, thank goodness, is only 3 through 5.
Correct.
Because when I was there, it was K through,
Yeah, it was.
yeah,
Yeah, K through 5.
yeah.
And we advocated strongly for the primary school. We, at that time, to the county commissioners, we offered incentives, again, with those tap fees, which at that level are based on the size of pipe that you have coming into the building and the flow. We exercised some influence there and reduced those types of fees to encourage the development of primary school, which they did do. We were thankful for that. We found in some other places where you have 2 elementary schools in the same municipality, it's been more divisive than it has been uniting people and communities. So we were very appreciative of that effort to go forward, and we were willing to be a partner in making that happen. And so I think there are ways for municipalities to be involved and to take some steps to make sure a municipality gets what it wants and needs, but also to make sure to satisfy some of the funding mechanisms that might be necessary. But, it's difficult for a municipality, especially one of our size of about 5,000 people, to provide a lot of funding for a school. I'm talking about a $40 to $60 million building. We can't offer a whole lot there. But, the land, as we found with Frederick County, with our library and this proposed senior center that's coming down the road, that the donation of land is a huge incentive to the county in that instance to build something there, because it reduces the cost considerably.
And that is definitely, especially as you're having those plans and the growth plans. I know that the school system really appreciates if you can do a site, if there is one needed in that area, particularly because we only have so much land here. And if we don't have those, if we're not planning for those sites, we could be in a real problem.
Right. The advantage of Middletown there, as you say, is, that's a 71-acre site. So we're basically taking 2 schools now and make it into one. So that's going to cause, but also bring about some room for the new high school.
Yeah.
And so, we're not sure where that's going to go yet. We'd hope to be involved in some of that early discussion, but it's too early for that at this point, I believe.
One thing you did mention is traffic on the campus, and that was part of the impetus to get these projects going, because we have a real traffic problem on that campus.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome. I live there.
I was hoping for a little relief tonight.
Yes.
One of the things that we have done, and the board has been very diligent in helping us do that, is we're trying to get all the traffic off of the town streets and onto the school property. But, the nature of the beast in pickup and drop-off is, I told our neighboring community, you can make all the rules you want to. If somebody's going to come and park on the street and it's a public street, we can't do anything about it. So, but we have made steps, and we've worked very hard with the design team to make sure that they can handle all the traffic of the school on the school property. And so that's how it's designed currently, and we're pleased with that, because I heard the other day, I think, both mayors, Mayor Kennard and Mayor Brown talked about traffic, and it's just a major issue wherever you have a community school. And I can't imagine what it would be like in an urban setting. It's got to really be.
Go down Route 80.
Oh, right.
Where there are
Yeah.
3 schools, right, there, and then go around the corner, and there's 2 more, so.
Yeah, and they, we have people, our primary school gets out at 3:30, and we have parents who are lined up at 2:15. And so it's, you can't, what are you going to do about
Yeah,
that?
it happens.
That's the way it is. 2:15 to sit there for an hour and 15 minutes waiting for your child. And this is on a sunny day. This is not like it's a rainy day. Rainy days and snow days, you gotta go, okay, I kind of get that. And if it's an unusual situation, fine. But this is our, you know,
You gotta
way
get
of
to
life.
dance.
I was just gonna say,
Sports
dance class.
practice
Right.
or, you
Yeah,
know,
that's right.
whatever.
That's right. There are circumstances necessitating that, that's for sure. But it's, I think we have it solved as much as we can solve it without taking into account the human nature of what people are going to do.
And where it comes into, like I said, where it comes into play with the schools and growth and some of the things that we talked about specifically is making sure that the school system and the state know what growth to plan for. And the county. The county is, they have to know like kind of what growth. So are there any obstacles to that you guys see as far as making those plans or having that partnership? You guys are autonomous as municipalities, so.
We have, I'm sorry, did you?
No, no, go.
We have taken some steps to try to mitigate that as well. I mean, our most recent development is a 144-unit active adult, so it doesn't even really impact the schools. And so one of the things we've talked about, and we still apply our improvement fee and water and sewer tap fee to active adult community as well.
Okay.
So that's something that we've looked at. That's the only kind of development we've allowed. In the last 10 years, from the 2010 to 2020 census, we've only grown 864 units. So, prior to that, it was over, it was 1,200 in the census before, 2,000 in the census before. So we've curbed our growth. We have, of the 4 schools that are in the municipality, the primary school is at 106%. The others, the middle school, I think, is at 72, the high school might be 79, and the elementary might be 80, 83 or something in there. So school crowding is not really an issue, but what the concern is of course, that primary school is a bubble of population, and that population bubble is going to move right through. So we have to kind of plan for that and make sure that we're doing that, and I think the Board of Ed's done a pretty good job with that in trying to plan for the future. But we've done our part, I think, in trying to mitigate the growth, and our residents want that, and we've responded to that as well. So that's one way in which we're trying to help with that situation.
Delegate, I think one of the things, so the city of Frederick we're at about 85,000 right now, and we're projected to grow probably in the next, we're thinking 100,000 in 5 years or something. I mean, it's certainly, we're the growth center right now. I think I heard a statistic yesterday that 70% of permits being pulled are in the city of Frederick, for Frederick County. So I don't want to, I think there's a lot of policy discussions about why we as a jurisdiction, why as a county, we do actually want our growth to happen in the city, and there's a lot of other discussions to have about that. But I will say, I do think there's a mentality shift that needs to happen. Just speaking for myself, something I've seen is that I'll just personally think that we need to be a lot more proactive about how we view, I think historically, the city, my city, has looked at education as a county matter, and we move the permitting through the process, and that's our job, right? And so, but not sort of linking the two together. And again, I'm the new one, so I've only been there for 3 years, so certainly, and we had a very robust conversation. I'll make sure the school mitigation fee conversation has prompted sort of is it appropriate to use mitigation fees as, we want to remain competitive? Well, we've already demonstrated that in the city, we're more than competitive. I mean, there's no issue with people not wanting to move to the city. So how do we, and we provided a memo to the rest of the council, which I'll make sure that you have, that sort of outlines the thinking behind the mitigation discussion, the history of it. And I just think it's important because it's really a mentality shift that needs to happen, especially for the biggest city in the county. I think there's just that we should be at the table and we should play a role. So to the point about the planning process, we've heard feedback from Dr. Lebo's team that our planning folks are working well. I think one of the, in terms of letting them know what our plans are, I think one of the things that we've identified is that program developments will be approved and then they won't immediately be built upon. And so it presents a real big challenge for FCPS because those approvals go into effect early, And then 5 years later, they can go ahead and move forward, and how is FCPS supposed to plan for that, right? I mean, that's just an
Right,
impossible.
And that's the same thing with the state, yes.
So those are
Yeah.
the types of things that I think why we need to be here and why we need to be. So I do really appreciate the invitation, because I think those are things that we can work through.
Is that can you review the APFO or as it currently stands now? Because it had changed a little bit from back when I was there.
I wouldn't want to misspeak. The document that I'm referring to outlines, our APFO was
Okay.
just outlined, I think, or excuse me, updated, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. It was interesting to me in that conversation yesterday, so very timely, that the city does not view necessarily the mitigation, I want to be careful how I word this, but I took it for granted that the mitigation funds that we collect are for new seats, right? So the thought being that if we permit development to move forward after testing above the threshold, that we're collecting those funds. And in my mind, I thought there was the nexus, sort of like we do this for affordable housing, we do this for forestation, we do this for in lieu of, right? So in lieu of building, you can give us money. And I always thought that meant give us money and then build seats. It was clear from the conversation yesterday that fund, if you've been following the news, we had a heck of a time getting that money out of the city coffers. We were successful in finally doing that. And it did go to expanding seats, so that was a good thing. But that isn't necessarily, we don't have any policy guidance that specifically says this will go to building schools. And there is not uniform agreement upon my council that we should do that. I'm just being totally transparent. So the conversation yesterday was really important because it revealed this sort of shifting of discussion that, I think in the city sometimes we get very focused on our city issues, and I think that just we need to really highlight this these construction concerns.
That's an old argument of growth that goes back to some of you remember Paris Glendenning and smart growth. And I know in speaking to some of the Frederick officials, I mean, the idea is, look, we're a city. The idea of smart growth is to grow in the city where the facilities are, and you make the city larger. You're not going for sprawl. You're trying to keep it contained. And that's a very good argument. But the problem is you don't pay for schools. So you also have to, the other side of the equation is, if you're going to go ahead and grow because you have the right to do that, and then you can't also then say, but our schools are overcrowded. So that's where the chicken and the egg comes. And so it's a tough place to be.
And likewise, in the city, we can't say that we are very pro-affordable housing and then constrict housing supplies so much that our prices go up. So I want to be careful that from our perspective, we look at it as a balancing act,
It's a balancing act, yeah.
but we do need to be here at the table.
And there's also the challenge of city residents and their children who live in the city, but the schools are outside of the city, and they're all being sent outside of the place where they live because we don't have the facilities in the city. So that becomes not so much an issue now, but it will become an issue down the road, no question.
Yeah.
And there is, as Delegate Kerr and I were talking, there is an issue with, we do have an affordable housing push right now, right? And that's part of the governor's, that's definitely been, a priority. But in Frederick County, where we are one of the areas, pretty much the biggest area of growth in the state, now we are a little bit at cross purposes because there hasn't been any increases in state funding, either as far as inflation or because of growth or anything like that. So I understand, why the push for affordable housing, but then we do have to then, are our policies at cross purposes, or is one hindering the other? And so how do we make those fixes? And I have always preferred to move forward, as a team. So having these conversations are very important because, when statements are made, and I'm just going to be very honest, when statements are made that it's a county problem, and it's not, it's a state issue. It's a state issue for us as far as school construction. It becomes another municipality's issue because we can't afford to fix Middletown High or Brunswick High or whatever. So it does have an impact. And then it's, of course, a huge impact with the Board of Ed. But the Board of Ed has no funding authority because they have to deal with the overcrowding and they have to deal with the schools, and Dr. Lebo has to go and make sure all those schools are perfect for our kids, and that's a very difficult job. So the more we can work together and however we can help you in those conversations, I know we would definitely, Dr. Lebo, right? We would definitely be.
And they have been, they've been.
Yeah. However we can support you in having those, and Burgess Miller said it perfectly as well. I mean, those are difficult conversations, but, I think they're ones we absolutely need to have even going forward. Does anyone else have any?
I have a question, just
Yeah.
your residents that have kids going outside of the city, how do they feel about the schools? I mean, they're in the city, wouldn't they want kids in the city schools, or is it like a different thought process? or-
So I think, let's see, are you familiar with where Wegmans is, right?
I'm
and-
from Baltimore, so
Oh.
yeah, that's
I mean, everybody knows where Wegmans
And we
is.
have
one in the whole
we have a
area.
Baltimore city that has city schools, and then we have
Everybody
a
knows.
Baltimore County that has
Right.
a county executive. We don't have any mayors. That was kind of cool last time.
That's very true, that's very true. So I think, a couple things. So, we have, when you ask how they feel, we have folks that it's difficult in the advocacy space for me to talk about city schools, because we do have schools that are around our periphery where my residents are going to. Like, no one would think Walkersville High is a city school, which I know you don't know where that is, but it's very, you would consider Walkersville to be a rural community.
Okay.
And we're sending our kids there, which it's a great school. Conversely, we have specific programming that is not available in the city of Frederick, and this is something that is a little outside of the context of this conversation, but it does matter. And International Baccalaureate IB, right? The only way that my city residents can go and participate in those programs are to go down clear to Urbana, which is about, where that, okay. So that is also a driver, because if we don't have physical spaces for kids to go, like I can't very well ask for expanded programming, because, I wasn't at the table, being a partner in this work. So, but that, when you ask, I think those are two things that have come up recent, since I've been serving, that the programming issue, and then also, of course, we have some constrictions on the hardscape that we can actually put the programs.
And I would say, in answer to your question, that from my experience, anytime we did a redistricting or anything, and I'm thinking particularly about Waverly, when we were talking about busing some of the Waverly kids, even just across the street, like, it's 40, so it's a big street, right, with lights and things like that, but even just busing them either over to Butterfly Ridge, or possibly even over to Middletown. You remember we were talking about busing some of the Waverly kids, and Waverly is what's the capacity, over 1,000, is it 1060? Yeah, over 1,000 seat elementary school that we built. And it was at capacity just with what? Walkability was capacity for that school. And we heard loud and clear from those residents at almost every single community. They did not want to even go across, have their kid be across the street. They did not want to have their child going, somewhere else where they were being bused. They wanted the walkability factor, and that was very attractive to them, and it was very important to their community. A lot of them, either if they don't have two cars or, whatever, they wanted the walkability and they wanted to be close to their kids.
Well, that's what I would think. As a city resident, I would want.
Yes.
I would be in the city for the cultural aspect.
Yes.
And would want my child to grow up in that cultural aspect. Also, my thought process.
Especially the elementary school.
Right.
You definitely hear it, like even in this area where the students are, they go to school at Spring Ridge, which is further out, that you wouldn't consider Spring Ridge a city located school. It's definitely out in the burbs.
Well, and I think that we recognize that redistricting is likely going to come up.
It has to.
Yes,
Still.
because when we're looking at the capacity, particularly of our elementary schools, that redistricting is one of the solutions, but anytime, and that's not a word that anybody wants to hear, including the board, because it raises a lot of emotions for folks.
I am
to
starting,
move,
I have
so.
2 years on the board. I said last night at our meeting, I have 2 years left. I'm not running for reelection. I am going to start putting it out there that your child can survive redistricting, because you're going to have to get used to it. We will do it as empathetically as we can, but your child may have to. I mean, somebody has to say it. I figure I'm gonna have to. I moved a lot. My brother was redistricted all the time. Montgomery County didn't ask you. 3 years in a row, he went to different schools and we didn't move. They didn't ask.
Yeah, we're like.
In the work.
It will be inevitable as we continue to look look at our school capacity. You know, when we have an elementary school, it's going to be at 200%. I mean, if we can't build a school, we're going to have to figure out how we can shuffle around. And so
And
that'll
then when
affect
we
the city
even
and
build a
the
new
county.
school, we're gonna have to shuffle
Right.
around.
And then
so-
once we build the new
Yeah.
school, that's redistricting as well. So it's definitely part of what we'll be talking about is a.
Do you have anything else?
The most encouraging thing I've heard in all these meetings is that you're seriously considering urban school design.
With our county partners. One big happy families. I mean, really, FCPS led the way, so I want to give credit. They've done a great job.
MML did a great presentation on urban schools, I think last year or the year before.
It's definitely been talked about.
And it's a very interesting concept.
And I think the time has come,
Yep.
especially within the boundaries of the city. And it makes sense. With all the municipalities, really, where we're seeing the large growth, with Brunswick as well. They're gonna need another elementary school before long.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's good. How many acres do we like for elementary school site?
So I'm going to caveat it, but the board policy does ask for 15 acres. And the reason I say I'm going to caveat that, because there's many things that can impact that. So if, as an example, a developer is proffering a site that's part of a larger community, and they're willing to take care of our stormwater quantity requirements, we need much less land to be able to accommodate that. One of the things with an urban design, and that we've talked with the city in particular about, is if we have proximity to parkland, we need even less acreage. So all of these things sort of scale back if we can have co-use opportunities, and then it's a win-win for both the municipality and the school system, because you're getting better utilization all the way around. So historically, it's been 15, 30, and 50 for elementary, middle, and high school, but depending on sort of what's available, we can make less than that work.
And that's going to be an important piece of the planning then, is making sure that as you have those development, that either that they are near the park site or, you know, to plant, because you can't go back and do that. Once it's gone, it's gone. So are there any high need areas that we have, Dr. Leva, that you know about for sites?
Where we need sites?
Yeah.
Generally, the greater Frederick City area, which is a super broad response, but in particular, the eastern part of the city of Frederick, and bleeding into the county there as well. That's where our growth centers are.
We don't have a site there or anything yet.
We did acquire a site outside of the city. I say we because the county still holds title to the land, but it was announced off of Gas House Pike right prior to the intersection with Linganore Road. So that's an elementary site.
Is that the one to alleviate the Oakdale crowding?
No, that's off of Munsetter. That's another one.
That's the second one.
And then
That's another one on top of that one, okay.
the county and the city and FCPS are talking through what the impact of the Brickworks property will be as well, because 1,000 units there will have an impact, and that will look very different if we're able to acquire a site there. And different, not in a bad way. It'll be a unique opportunity for us.
And I like that, I like the unique opportunity part of it, that's cool. Senator, did you have anyone else have any questions?
The only thing I'll add at the end, in my last comment, is that, I think this is a great start to bring municipalities in, to give an opportunity to hear what's going on in our communities and what we can do about schools, if anything. But the fact is, I think moving forward, there has to be a greater conversation involving all of those parties. When we're talking about growth and paying for schools and paying for schools, I think everybody needs to be at the table for that. It's not like we're growing our community. We have 3,000 unit development, and for example, in Brunswick, and I'm not picking on or criticizing Brunswick, but how many conversations has Brunswick had with the county executive or the county council about that? In other words, to plan, or with the Board of Education about that. So,
Please pay attention.
yeah, so I think that's imperative that we open up the dialogue a little more between the Board of Ed and municipalities. And of course, the county would be obviously at the table. Because I've had conversations with the county executive about, we're just speaking for smaller municipalities and primarily north and west. All of our resources are going east. And, and I said to her, because when she first was elected, asked me to come in and speak with her, and I said, well, I mean, is this a frank conversation, or you want me to tell you, congratulations and blah, blah, blah. And she goes, no, I want you to be very frank. And I said, well, then, stop sending all your resources to the eastern part of the county. I know that's where the population growth is, but you're going to have to look at the northern and western parts of the county as well. And we tend to get, overlooked and passed over because there's not a lot of growth in some of those places, but the needs are still there. So.
All right. No, that's good. No, yes, definitely, and figuring out about possibly making a recommendation about that. I mean, this is only a recommending body.
Right.
So it's only recommending to the groups that do the things. So that is it. But yeah, but I know your point is very well taken, and I am like the communication piece. That's why we're all here. So, and I thank you guys for coming. You are welcome to stick around for the rest of the presentations. We wanted to have you guys go first, but please stay at the table and enjoy. I get Dr. Lebo, are you up first, or Ms. Lebo, are you going to go up first? Is that?
Yeah, I can go if you want me to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your packet of handouts, I put a little packet together with a paper clip, so you'll know where that is. So what I did was I took the reports that we linked to your agenda. I want to say it was our first meeting, I believe. It's still up there. All the materials are available with the final reports from these work groups. So because I'm sure that none of you read the lengthy reports that were listed, what I did was I took the recommendations from those reports and I abbreviated them. So what you have in front of you with the first packet is the NOT Commission recommendations, and they're abbreviated. I cut out a lot of the words. This was a 10-page document, now on 4 pages. So if you look, I tried to go through, and based on my knowledge, now that I'll defer to Alex and Paul if they have additional information they want to put in there, the ones that have been implemented are not highlighted. The ones that were never implemented, I highlighted, just to say that they were never implemented. But that doesn't mean that the ones that are not highlighted were implemented exactly as they're written in the wording, because they were done through legislation, and legislation sometimes changed the context a little bit, but overall, the bulk of the NOT Commission recommendations were implemented during the time. You can see that, like we do have P3s right now, but on page 2, number 9, the one that is highlighted is to do long-term lease agreements that don't require a Board of Education to own the land at the end. I don't believe that part has been implemented yet, has it?
Correct. However, the IAC has implemented a workaround in its own policy this last year, which now allows for state CIP dollars to go into capital improvements in leased facilities, still owned by a private owner, so long as the lease is at least 25 years old, 25 years long, so that the state investment is guaranteed to be fully used for the purpose of supporting education and would not accrue to the owner after the lease ended in a shorter period of time. So to the extent that this was intended to support investments in privately owned buildings to meet school needs, that now can be done with state capital support for improvements.
Not that we have more money. But it can
Theoretically.
You want to stretch your dollars even further. Yes, but it's possible. It's possible now, assuming the Board of Education agrees with that.
So I highlighted number 21 because I think that the time this recommendation was to really truly have regional cost per school, cost per square foot school and figures that differed across the state depending on where you were. So that hasn't really been implemented. But as the IAC calculates each year the cost per square foot for school construction, they do take into account regional differences in Maryland based on actual bids that are coming in. So I'll say that 21 is maybe half implemented, so.
Probably fair.
Okay, but, so I don't want you to think that we don't, that's not taken into consideration. It is.
The main obstacle to implementing it fully is that the sample set of pricing is just so small that it's really not, it's not possible to set a reasonably accurate dollar figure for regions. It's just very, some years we just haven't had enough to even, but what would have been a reasonable
For number 31, I did not, I personally am not aware of a lot of regional partnerships to improve efficiencies. I don't know if we have had a lot. I think it's an area that we're exploring, but it hasn't just really developed at
The
this.
statute permits it. No LEAs seem to have expressed very much interest in the joint projects.
Not even on the Eastern Shore where they've had some other kind of consortiums.
And then number 36, at the time that the NOC Commission was doing their work, prevailing wage was a big topic in Maryland. And we kind of got away from that topic once it had been established for a few years, and really the cost of escalators that we were seeing in school construction were not directly related to prevailing wage. So I don't want to act like this was implemented. It was really like the time change. Would you say that's fair?
100%.
Okay. So, and that's pretty much, I feel like everything else pretty much, but you could go take a look and we can debate it at the next meeting if you want. But I feel like that was most of what was going on with the NOC Commission. The next one in your packet is the School Construction Workgroup. This was the group that was run by the county. Mike Marshner chaired this group. It was made up of several developers, industry professionals. Ray Barnes started on that committee. Paul came in the middle of it and filled in when Ray retired. So you might remember Joe DiToli was on that committee. We're talking, this was a long time ago. So this one we did, there was a few more that were not implemented. And I see Mr. McKay's not here today, but the audit, which he's going to talk about at some point, looked at these recommendations, and we were audited on these recommendations. So again, over the course of time, some of the, like, we've progressed beyond what these recommendations were. So yes, you will see that there's more yellow here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't made progress on the areas that were yellow. So again, prevailing wage number 2, prevailing wage, we've kind of gotten around that. At the time, this committee wanted to go back to the 25% for prevailing wage projects because we were seeing such a big escalation in Frederick High School. But we've kind of gotten away from that at this point. The number 1 under other possible legislative initiatives, at the time, what the committee wanted to see, and our delegation members could understand this, when a change comes through legislation and that change is passed by, let's say, April, the end of the session, we really talked about how quickly LEAs are expected to implement what is passed through legislation, and how that really does snowball and create problems for not only the LEAs, but the county in terms of when we have to pivot and what we have to do for adding additional dollars to projects that are already started. In our opinion of this, on this committee, a 3-year window for those legislative initiatives that are really going to impact the cost of schools would be very helpful, because it takes about 3 years for us to catch up when those changes come. And I don't think that has ever been actually addressed, but it is something that the committee at the time definitely, and I could see an advantage for that even today. So, so that's it. We talked on the next page, page number 2.
Wait, hold on.
Janice, can I ask you, could you give me an example of one of the changes that was?
Well, at the
considered to be
time,
difficult?
prevailing wage was a biggie. Like, we were definitely talking about prevailing wage because Frederick High School, and it was really a combination of prevailing wage and some of the, trying to remember if it was the square footage adjustment.
I think it was the school construction costs in general, wasn't it, that went way up
Well, it
too?
did go up, but that adjusts every year, so
Yeah,
we're.
but I mean, it went,
But there were other regulatory changes that happened at the same time as prevailing wage. I think it had to do, I'm gonna have to remember, but it was definitely in the mechanical bids, because our mechanical bids went up so much that that project increased from literally May until July. That project increased by $30 million. That one project. And of course, the state had already committed their first dollar to that project, so we were kind of like locked in, and the county had to eat the bulk of the escalation of that project. And I think that just a little bit of a delay in allowing us to do that would have been much easier. But it was a real challenge to get the funding in place to keep Frederick High School on track.
it
So
started
I
at
would-
80 and went, what was the final numbers?
114.5. 114.5.
Yeah.
The IAC does have a solution available for that kind of problem.
You do now, you have the
We do.
the
Maximum
reserve.
state award increase too, right? So if any district encounters cost escalation on a project that is not the district's fault, they can come to the IC and say, hey, you all awarded X amount previously, but things have changed since, and we really need, the cost is much greater, and we need the state share to increase. The IAC can, case by case, evaluate. We've granted 5 of those this last year.
I was gonna say, we've done a couple
5 or
of
6.
them. How about
Yeah,
with
so
the air conditioning
that
during
is
COVID
now
and
getting,
stuff?
has gotten, with the recent, cost inflations, heavy use.
And I would just say to the delegation members, just, remember that it does take the LEAs and the counties a little bit of time to bounce back from some of the legislative changes that come down the pike. Okay, then the school site acquisition section, number 2 and number 3. I think that we probably have work to do with our municipalities on school sites, so I'm going to say that we could probably do some of that. I know that some do kind of reserve water capacity. We have those conversations. We're better at it with some than we are with others. So I would just say it's an area that we still are working on. Cooperative review, I could say, and I think Paul would agree, that we could do a better job between Frederick County Planning and Permitting and FCPS. I think when a problem arises, we're all over it, but we probably could do it better preemptively. I will say we've gotten very good, like with our last 2 projects that are happening now between Valley and Green Valley. We're in constant communication on those projects. So I feel like it's an area where we've really improved. I would say, and this is not for my own self, but it is helpful to have a person in a role like my role, because I can bridge between the government and the school system more quickly than somebody from FCPS trying to schedule a meeting with somebody from planning. They just call me and I work on that. But my position is at the discretion of the county executive. So I think that is a benefit to have somebody who fits that role to act as that liaison between all of it. I don't think we have a statewide bonding contract for individual bidders. Recently, Paul, I don't know if you want to jump on that, but I don't think that we've had a problem with bidders, but in the past, there were definitely problems with only getting 1 or 2 bids for a particular package. That becomes a real challenge in getting the best cost analysis. This committee at the time got very technical into how we can make our bids more attractive. The more attractive and the more competition we have for our bids, generally the lower price of the package that we're bidding. And it becomes really critical when we're looking at some of those more highly technical packages for like HVAC systems and other mechanical systems that are more technically based, and that we're in greater competition with everybody else who's building anything else. And I don't know if that's a statewide concern or if it's really just because we're further out, we don't have the benefit of being in a more urban-y area. It seems like we're more in competition for bid packages with more Western Maryland than drawing people from Baltimore. Would you say that's true?
I'd say that has changed over the last couple of years. And back to your comment on prevailing wage, I think that the market rates have just become what the Baltimore and DC markets are. You know,
Everybody's hearing.
everybody's carrying that. That's why prevailing wage has not been an issue that we at the staff have pushed with our board, because it's just, that's the pricing. It doesn't matter whether it's prevailing wage or not. It just is what the market rate is at the time. But to Janice's point, and we did change our delivery method. While the committee didn't necessarily think there would be a change, we have implemented, dependent on the type of projects, construction manager at risk as well as design build. And the IAC has been very receptive to that, because it's very project based, right? And when we make a case, like, we believe this addition project is a great opportunity for design build. We can get it into the ground, we get the shovel in the ground faster, we can expedite through the review process with DGS and the ISC staff, and we think it'll be a win-win for everybody. We had a lot of success, and our bidders have increased because there's some incentive for whoever the design builder or the CM at risk is, because they have a little bit of stake in what that looks like. So the more people they get out to bid, if they can keep those numbers down, it's better for them as well. So I would attribute some of our increase in bidding to our modification in our delivery method as well.
For the section on fees, so this committee at the time, we were really looking at, the charge of this committee was to try to shave 10% off the cost of the overall cost of the project and the cost of the school. So we were looking at every possible way that we could save on the project. One thing that came up, which would have to be a county legislative change, is that the Board of Education would not be charged the fees that are used by our that are charged by our permitting office for certain inspections and certain connections and water and sewer capacity fees, all those kinds of things. At the time, because it would be a legislative change, and we at the time did not have a county council that was favorable to looking at that structure, and COVID hit, and we had I will say that the previous county executive, this was not a priority for her during those COVID years to address fee problems. We haven't had that conversation at the county yet, so I'm gonna say that this whole section on fees is not something that we're necessarily opposed to. We just have not had that conversation. And it would require a legislative change on the county side. Again, the fees charged to a project are not the large preponderance of the cost of the project. So while, it's kind of like, yes, you'll save money, but it won't necessarily get you to advance another project more quickly. It's gonna be in the thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars.
Janice,
But it is a conversation we need to have.
I'm so sorry, what year was this final report?
2017? Okay, same thing with, remove the requirement for off-site improvements that the off-site improvement has to be operational before we can issue a building permit. So we haven't really had to do many off-site improvements. The last off-site improvement I think that we had to do was Butterfly Ridge. But I will say that this is still a problem in the county. For example, the Green Valley elementary school traffic light had to be installed and operational prior to us getting a building permit, because that's the way the DRRA was written. So this is an area that we still would need to work on at the county, and again, that will require a legislative fix. And same thing with road adequacy tests. We have not taken that issue up, and that would also be legislative. And then we, at the time, the committee wanted to have a member of either county planning staff or county DPW staff actually work with FCPS at the design specification stage when we're talking about projects, just so that everybody stays on the same page for what the requirements are for a school because they change over time. And that really hasn't been implemented, correct, Paul? We don't have anybody who's doing that yet.
Is that still a value?
I would say that not as, I mean, I feel like in my role, I'm talking all the time to Paul, his team, Adnan when he was here, and I'm sure, we'll continue those conversations. I feel like it's less of an issue than it was in 2017, but we probably could always do better, making sure that everybody's on the same page as these buildings, because again, the one thing that came out of this committee that is not necessarily a recommendation, but we talked about it all the time. Time is money. The quicker we can get these buildings done, the better. And the more communication that goes back and forth between, whether it's the municipalities, if it's located in a municipality, or whether it's in the county and the school system and all the different divisions in the county, including well, it's not DUSWAM anymore, but water and sewer and our DPW staff and our inspectors that have to inspect the buildings. Like, we don't want to hold up any permits. We really, time is money, and the quicker we can do it, the less costly it is. And, we need these buildings. Typically, by the time we break ground, we needed them 5 years ago. So, we need them quickly. The next.
Can I make a comment there? It's imperative that in municipalities, that the Board of Ed and the Board of County come into planning commissions way ahead of time and talk about what it is you want to do and what the plan is. And it doesn't have to be a detailed plan, but the planning commissions need to know what's coming up in front of them and what they're going to have to deal with. And currently, that's not really being done. It's like, all right, we've developed this, here it is. And so everybody's seeing that for the first time, where there should be some discussions prior to that. And that will make the process go a little bit more smoothly and also more efficient.
I would just add, I think some of the reason for that recommendation has changed with, frankly, the struggling for the right word. I would say the partnerships is probably the right word, in particular with the county and the city staff. And I think that's probably the largest difference in the municipality is when we at the staff level have an issue with the city, and I'll talk about Yellow Springs for 1 second, which is a replacement school that's in the city. The city staff, we got all of the right people from the city that were needed from all their engineering, their traffic. We jumped on with our consultants. How can we move through this? Everybody gave their perspective and input, and we were able to move forward with a plan that we could take to the Planning Commission really quickly, right? So that's the level of partnership that did not exist in 2017. That is very different to today, right? When I first started, that wouldn't have happened, right? So that's a huge shift in the way that we all view this as a partnership. So that's why the municipalities are a little different oftentimes because they are singletons in their staff. So Middletown, as an example, has a planner and then they have an engineer, but they don't always have the breadth of experience because they have to rely on consultants at times for feedback, and so it's a valid comment on the municipality, the smaller municipality side. I think at the staff level with the larger municipality being the city of Frederick and the county itself, where we do most of the work, that partnership has really evolved and is very effective now.
And I think that's some of what we took from our conversation last time, was how to help the municipalities and support the municipalities as we go through some of these things, because they might not have some of the resources.
You know, we have a planner and we have an engineer, and there are several municipalities that don't have either.
Right.
So, you know, that's where it really gets in a really sticky situation there.
Yeah.
And we have actually 2 engineers, so, you know, that's unusual. I'll just point that out.
Correct.
But I think getting in early can avoid a lot of the.
It does.
Yes.
It absolutely does.
The next 2 pages in your packet, the first one is the Adequate Public Facilities Council. So this council met for about a year, maybe a little bit over, and then we got stopped because COVID came. And then after COVID, there was really no reason to reconvene this council. And there was a change in administration. So I will say that the purpose of this council was to look at the data. So this council spent a lot of time analyzing school capacities, analyzing enrollment counts, analyzing, you know, just all the data that we could find related to like the EFMP and the schedule of projects and what makes sense. Does it make sense to go this way? And it was separate from, the Board of Education gets their annual update. This committee was more to help the county executive plan budgetarily what we needed to put in place and what made sense. So I'm happy to say that when this committee issued their report they met twice a year, they issued a final report in May, so that, to the county executive, so that the county executive could then meet with the superintendent to say, this is what I'm seeing from my committee, and have those conversations before the board passed their EFMP in July. That was the intent. So I'm happy to say that all of the recommendations for the 1 year that we met were implemented. So that's why there's no yellow highlights. The next one is the school construction ad hoc work group, and that we formed last year. And that committee had 1 recommendation, and the recommendation did make the legislative package of the county executive as well as the Board of Education, and that was to increase the IAC State Capital Improvement Program funding to $600 million annually, with an annual escalator, so that was tied to the cost of school construction, so that would keep pace with inflation, which it's not doing now. And that would not impact the other sources of funding that we have, including but not limited to aging schools, healthy schools, EGRC, or Built to Learn funding. And how did they get that money, or how did they get that $600 million number? And that was basically to take the $450 million that was recommended by the NOT Commission and escalate it by the cost of school construction for the subsequent years. Is how we got to the 600, correct, Paul? That was it. And then I will say that the Board of Ed, in their preliminary document that has not been voted on yet, has this $618 million for this year's legislative package, because the cost of school construction did go up by 3%. And I believe the county executive supports that initiative as well.
So do I.
I like that bill. We've got all levels of government here. Let's make it a delegation bill.
I think she'll come and talk to you about that.
All right. That's good, thank you.
That's it. That's your update for all the local county ones, and then I know Alex is going to talk about the other work groups that came out of the NOC committee.
Jennifer, that was excellent, thank you. The way you organized it was great.
If I could, can I excuse myself?
Yeah, thank you
Off
for
to go.
coming and talking.
Sorry, yeah, thank you all. Appreciate the work you all do. Understand your point of view.
I understand your.
Thank you.
Run through a summary of the assessment and funding work group. So, one of the 2 work groups that came out of the NOC Commission recommendations, and it met in 2019 for a time, and then it was suspended with COVID, and then met again in 2021. It included County Executive Gardner at the time. And it was to look at first how the state's new assessment, which was mandated in the legislation 2018, and actually was implemented 2020 through 2021 for the baseline, assessing all 1,400 schools in the state. And because the procurement had been so delayed, challenges at the Board of Contract Appeals, et cetera, what had originally been intended to be done and completely, all the data crunched and everything and analyzed and recommendations ready to go for this work group, it was not done in time. So they essentially said, okay, first recommendation is to push off the use of that data for funding decisions for a few years. They made it fiscal 26, subsequently pushed back a little bit further. But the recommendations there were then to begin the priority fund, which would be a separate fund of money complementary to the CIP, additional to the CIP, that would take the highest need schools identified in the statewide assessment and start to systematically work down by funding from the state replacement of those highest needs, basically worst condition facilities. That is now on schedule to start with fiscal 28. So we do expect, the legislative mandate currently says 70 million, this says 80, but it was adjusted slightly in subsequent years, 70 million, which we expect to start in fiscal 28 with using the statewide facility assessment data and the statewide ranking list. But the money actually kicks in fiscal 27, so there'll be a first interim year using a separate set of criteria for IAC to apply to find projects to allocate those dollars to. 1.3 legislative work group should be formed July 24. That has been rescheduled to July 2025 to take a look at how the condition data and the educational sufficiency data should be weighted as they're put together to create the single combined facility score that would then be rankable. So the RFP we used for the statewide facility assessment back in 2019 has a set of draft weights in it. It's on our website if you are interested in looking at them. They weight issues in the building that pose an immediate threat to life, safety, and health very high, and also it weights basically missing seats and missing spaces due to overcrowding, also very highly, and then the other issues a bit lower. And I think it is actually a very well-balanced set of draft weights, but the work group will convene next summer to take a look at those in depth and detail and decide how they should shake out, and then we'll use that to generate a statewide ranking list. Other key points here are cost sharing. Section 2, it recommended adjusting the state's cost share formula components to align with Blueprint and add add-ons to the state cost share for project level attributes. Those have been implemented. Concentration of poverty add-ons of 10 percentage points and 5 percentage points depending on the level. Maintenance add-on 5 points also. TCO was not implemented as a state share add-on, but it was implemented as a different incentive in statute. No one has taken advantage of it yet. Very, very difficult to meet that threshold. And the net zero incentive has also been implemented in statute, so any net zero school now gets 5 extra state share points, which could mean, $2-3 million or so on a project or more. Gross area baselines, all of those have been implemented. 3.1 in statute, 3.2 is done also. 3.3 was also done last year in the Blueprint work group, where we expanded the state square footage per student to take into account the needs of program requirements in the blueprint, so that's done. Local share revolving loan fund, some of that was done, and then it was deleted last year in legislation, so it does not exist anymore. So those you can cross out.
Do we know which one was that one was deleted?
That was four, all of
All of them?
four.
Oh, just all of them?
The fund doesn't
Okay.
exist, well,
Just the whole fund doesn't exist.
yeah.
Got it,
The fund is gone, the money is,
got it.
But I don't think anybody took advantage of it, did they? It was in place?
no, but that's because we were still in the process of designing the program regulations, had not implemented them yet. And the General Assembly decided that they wanted the money for other things, and the fund was deleted. Now, from the IAC's perspective, we had concerns that it would be difficult for LEAs to pay back if it was for a local share, that unless there was a very generous ability for the IAC to grant waivers for repayment, that it would end up not becoming very helpful in the end anyway, so I don't know that it was a great loss. Any thoughts, questions on any of those topics? Yes?
Kind of reminds me of the way infrastructure banks are designed. Is that the model for this?
That was essentially the concept behind it, was that with a primer shot of, 50, 70 million up front, right, built up over a 3-year period or so, then that would have been enough to give out the loans, and then the repayment would have fueled more, and it would have, like an infrastructure bank, would have rolled along and just facilitated. But again, the question of where would the county or the school district obtain the additional funding to do all the projects they would then need to do and pay back was not really answered ever. And then the second thing is the project needs have accelerated, the costs have accelerated since, such that it would have made it very difficult without a repayment waiver.
But when you think about the alternatives, such as a public-private partnership, this is a more cost-effective source of borrowing.
Yeah, I think technically that is correct. Although it could be that there are some other possible options for financing that are not quite as efficient as this model, but getting closer to it, that could be available in coming years. We'll have to just see how that goes. Good point, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, very good, thank you. And then, so, I guess since Councilman McKay is not here, we'll wait till next week. We have the agenda, the IIAA audit is attached to the current agenda, if you guys had that, if you wanted to review that, unless, Dr. Lebo, did you have any comments on how we should look at that, or have any thoughts on that?
If the members have time, there is a flow chart in there that is a really good visual that highlights how school construction works from the request for funding through all of the reviews, and then ultimately approval and getting a shovel in the ground. That was actually, the auditors themselves wanted to go through that, so they had a comprehensive understanding. And it shows the complexity of it, and complexity not in a bad way. There are so many reviews that go into the school construction process, and so many checks and balances to ensure that we are spending large dollars of the public's funds, and there are so many reviews to ensure that we're doing it in an appropriate manner. So we actually, that was somewhat of a fun exercise for us facility nerds, because it really helped articulate it, put a visual to the work that we do. There were no findings in that audit either, so we're proud of that work as well. And they spent over a year going back and forth with us. It was a comprehensive audit for our team. So it's proud when you can not have any findings, but it really highlighted the level of professionalism that we have on our teams, and then the level of oversight from the county and the state.
that is some tiny writing on these flow charts.
Yes.
It is very tiny writing to be. That was.
That's not to blow that up. on my
Yeah, we
computer.
can.
I'm not even gonna try.
Yeah, I don't, it is like, yes.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. Kira, can we make sure to, like, I know it's attached to the work group, but can we go ahead and send that to them as well when we get a chance? So they have it?
This?
No, the IAAC, the IIAA report. Too many of them tonight. So, yes. Okay. Very good. And then, so, yeah, so if we look at that, and then if Councilman Member McKay wanted to bring up anything next time, is that okay with the? Yeah, okay, all right, then we can have that discussion then. All right, Dr. Lebo, are you ready to go?
So I was asked to just kind of give an update again of where we are from our facilities portfolio, and then talk about the long-term needs and the impact of sort of projected funding levels and what that'll look like for our portfolio. So we talked about this in our first meeting, but this is just a different visual to show our portfolio age and kind of where we are. There's a couple of things I want to point out on this slide to the group. The colors are represented, whether it's an elementary, middle, or high school, by each of the age grouping categories. Just wanted to highlight a couple of schools. And it appears when I pulled this from Google Slides to PowerPoint, this arrow should be going here. My apologies. That's going here. So our oldest three schools that are in the 91 to 95-year-old range are Newmarket Elementary, New Midway Elementary, and Parkway Elementary. And I do want to highlight that none of those three are in our 10-year plan. It just shows the complexity of where we are. But we've got a phenomenal maintenance team that has been able to do some enhancements at those schools, but they're aging and they are not in our 10-year plan.
Were you looking at, when you have the list, so was that first slide just by age?
This is just by age. This is not by condition. Correct.
Into account, just by age.
It's just one measure when you look at a building. Certainly, we've got 200- and 300-year-old buildings in this country, right? And if you go to Europe, you've got many, many years older than that, but they've had adequate funding to support the ongoing maintenance and renovation needs in those buildings. The other thing I meant to, I'm glad you stopped me for a second, Delegate Miller, is I want to highlight the orange in this section. And this is really part of the larger problem that we've been discussing. This is 5 high schools in this roughly 46 to 60 year old range. And so that when we talk about big dollars for the county and the state, those high school projects are expensive. Yes, sir.
Would you say high schools, they get more wear and tear than elementary school, or?
Interesting question.
That is an interesting.
Different, I would say. Wear and tear might not be the best term. Utilization, I would say yes. Our high schools are generally, utilize the most of all of our facilities. Because there are summer programs that we have going on for athletics and extracurricular activities and academic things, and we tend, and even things like professional development for our staff. And because they're larger facilities and they can hold those large groups, they tend to get utilized
More, so they could really actually be older in real life terms.
Correct.
And then you gotta think, those schools are used from 6:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night.
Or later.
Or later, yeah.
Correct. And oftentimes, to the point, our elementary schools, certainly with our use of facilities, get groups that are in there, but they're not typically large groups, right? So maybe they're using the cafeteria, or the media center, or a classroom or two, or the gym, but they're not using the whole building. Because of the nature of a high school, they're not filling the building, but they're using multiple pockets of the building, certainly at a larger rate than an elementary school. This chart wanted to show our backlog by age with planned projects. And so the intent of this is to show you, if I can highlight those 3 schools again. When there's nothing above it, that means that there are no planned projects in the 10-year period associated with these schools. So in the 70 to 75 range, we do have 4 schools, but only 2 projects that are planned in those schools. And I know our board members probably asking which 2, so I'll just point it out. Thurmont Middle and Woodsboro Elementary are in this 70 to 75 without a planned project in there as well.
And then if you waved a magic wand and you had like perfect funding, like where would your ratios of that be? Like where would you?
Could you ask the question again?
Like in terms of if you're doing, if you have those due for, the 6 due for replacement, the 32 due for limited renovation, right? So in a perfect world, like if you had the funding, sufficient funding, would you be still doing these the same way? Would it look any different?
So the point of pointing this out is sort of where the gap is, and I'm going to get into it in a couple of slides to talk about sort of what that optimal will look like. But what we have sort of landed on is those schools that are in this 40+ range, because generally speaking, our age of the facility and condition are closely aligned. That's not always the case. Governor Thomas Johnson High School is an example. We did a comprehensive renovation, not only a comprehensive renovation, and so that's one of the 5 schools that I talked about, but it is the lowest of the priorities from FCPS staff perspective because it had that comprehensive. Honestly, it is what that is a perfect model, what we did with Governor Thomas Johnson High School in terms of its condition when we were able to renovate that in the late 90s and early 2000s. Because really that got us a really functional, high quality school for these last 24 years.
Was TJ Middle still in there when that renovation happened, or?
That happened at the same time that the middle school ended up opening, so they pulled them out. And I believe they all remained in the high school building until the middle school was ready, and then they began the renovation. I had to get the details to be specific. But what we have felt is generally in that 40+ year range, it does not make sense for us to invest in a wholesale renovation because there's so many systems that need addressed at that point. We believe we should push it to the end of its useful life to get it to the replacement cycle. And what we've really tried to focus on is this 40 and younger and getting into a sustainable process where we're doing limited renovations at that roughly 35-ish year mark. That gets us a high quality, improved instructional and facility condition that'll get us through that 70-ish year mark. It's helpful that our quality of buildings is much better today than, if I could highlight the Green Valley and the Middletown Elementary buildings, which are our wonderful open space 70s construction and design that we would love to get rid of.
Wonderful.
So we're building a better building today that will last the test of time.
I taught it.
Well, wait, can you go back for a second? The other thing I want to point out is that most of these projects that are in the process, Green Valley, Middletown, Yellow Springs, all also have additional seats because at the time when these schools were built, we were building smaller schools, more neighborhoody schools. And our schools now are built on a prototype where these are up to their maximum capacities at this point. So we are adding, in general, other than Middletown, which is only getting 60 seats or so.
Middletown is the only one that's not getting a significant number of seats.
But the other ones are getting like 300 seat additions in addition to replacing the buildings.
So I hope you appreciate this slide.
It looks like geometry.
This is one of my favorites, and we've got a phenomenal team. I can't take credit for it. Trying to put a visualization to, over the last 3 decades, we have basically had a 4-to-1 ratio of new schools / addition to replacement / renovations. We've effectively been able to switch that, which is much needed for our portfolio. We have planned over the next decade about 1 new / addition for every 4 renovations. renovation and replacements. And so this spider chart, as we have dubbed it, hopefully just gives a visual representation of that and what we have planned for the future. But to Janice's point a second ago, we're not just replacing in kind. We're adding the capacity when we replace some of our smaller schools, because that's really how we're going to get to improved overall facility condition and address our capacity. We really had to do that flip to address our aging infrastructure and then add capacity where we can.
So a new construction is actually a new school that never existed. A replacement is a new school that was there, but.
Correct. And not always on the same site. We've also had 2 instances currently where we're replacing the school at I don't want to say adjacent, but a very close, in close proximity. The Yellow Springs project that I mentioned, the existing Yellow Springs is on is on well and septic. It is right outside of the city's municipal boundaries. Not that I have a crystal ball, but I would anticipate that the city that's an enticing area for them to continue to grow there. They've got sort of the surrounding area with some additional annexations. And so the Yellow Springs, where we're going to construct the new one, is actually within the municipal boundaries, so we have access to all those services, water and sewer, and then certainly we know we're going to need an additional school site, so we're just going to retain the site and hope as annexation, not hope, believe that is what is in the comprehensive plan for the city. It will grow out to there, we'll have those services provided. Similar with our Green Valley site as well. It's now going to be constructed within a 1,000-unit development that had already extended water and sewer. It's about a mile from the existing site. And so we would anticipate that over the next few years, there'll continue to be growth in the county, and they'll extend those needed services to that site. Again, it ends up being a win-win from our perspective.
When was the last time you sold a site?
Sold a site?
I mean, we've seen Baltimore City
There was
selling
one.
schools. I didn't know.
Middletown's old kindergarten building.
Thank you.
When was
You're
that?
right.
I was gonna say.
There has been one.
Middletown.
Probably about 5 years ago, we sold an old, Janice referred to as the kindergarten building. I believe it was probably
It was the elementary
the
school.
elementary school, but it was less than 3-acre site. It was a very aging structure, did not fit with any of our growth needs. There was no land around it, but there has generally not been a need to sell property. Everywhere where we have property, we need it or we will need it, and so we're retaining it.
You have a land bank?
We describe when you say land bank.
Well, I know Baltimore County has land that they bought in schools that may.
Yes, we do, and actually, a few years ago, the county implemented, as part of their impact fees, part of that impact fees is for land acquisition. So that has been a game changer for us. That's how we acquired our future high school site. It's how we acquired the elementary site that I mentioned a little bit ago off of Gas House Pike near Linganore Road. It allows us to procure sites, frankly, before they become a developed area, and the zoning changes on them, and the price goes through the roof. So the property that we acquired is zoned agricultural, and that's okay, because all of the amenities that we need are right there. We'll be able to work through the rezoning process and get an institutional overlay there, and it won't be a problem. But we were able to do that in advance, which ultimately will save the taxpayer, we believe.
Well, didn't we sell the site over on TJ with where the firehouse? But that wasn't a school site. That was just land that we had from the building, from the office buildings where nutrition is.
That went back to the county.
It went to the county, and the county didn't.
And it's now a fire station.
Yeah, it's a fight. Yeah.
Correct. We've had a couple of other small sites. Linden Ballinger is an example with the old way that acreage was supposed to be donated or proffered to the county, and it ended up providing, frankly, unusable and really small spaces. So I think that one was about a 5-acre site. It was adjoining the existing Tuscarora Elementary, but there was not really a way to expand the existing elementary school to take advantage of that parcel. And so we've worked diligently with the county where we had those sites that we don't believe have any long-term need, that we revert those back to the county as part of the process. It's in state law on how we have to dispose of property. And so they were able to use that for economic purposes and for affordable housing was the intent in the Linden parcel.
I feel like there was one by Dearborn.
There was in the
Yes,
Dearborn
there
community
was.
as well, correct.
And Sebillsville is a charter school, so we have another school that's a charter, that we offer to a charter school.
And Yellow Springs,
Will be retained, right?
Correct.
and one of our charter schools is going to use it.
Until we need the land. This just want to highlight over the next decade what our deferred costs will be. And anticipate by 2034, if we did nothing in our CIP, would be at about $862 million. This is, we believe, if everything in the 10-year plan were to be approved and continue on schedule, our deferred maintenance cost would be around $732 million. So that's what that sort of different bar over here, that's, if everything in there is approved and moves forward on that timeline, this is what our deferred maintenance will be. If we don't do any of the replacement projects in that CIP and don't have a change to our existing funding, it would be about $862 million.
Paul, can you show me how that relates to, does that relate to the limited reno and the replacement reno, like all of those projects that you had on the other slide? Are they all of that plus everything else you need to do, or is that mainly just that 10 years you were talking about?
It is, so this is mainly the 10 years and accounts for those projects. So when we do limited renovations or replacements, we're decreasing our overall deferred maintenance, right? And so, again, it's an assumption that we're going to be able to proceed on time, because forgot where I was going with that, my apologies.
But again, these are major projects only, right?
That's correct. Those are
that's-
only the major projects.
Okay, and then, because, I mean, we always felt the crunch of when do you replace things in a school that you're planning to either do a major renovation or a new build, or, and that becomes an issue.
One of the things that we've also, we have attempted to limit systemic projects to the greatest extent possible for a couple of reasons. A, our capital dollars are very limited. B, when, to the point you just raised, Delegate Miller, of doing a roof replacement, for a project that's going to get ultimately completely replaced 10 years after you do the roof replacement, right? And so we're not getting the full value of that replacement that we did. And that's for all major systems as well. But the reason we implemented that, it required huge coordination with the county and our board to request in our annual CIP allocation, we have a systemic contingency line item that allows us to move if we have a failure of any one of those systems. And so this goes back to, we've got a phenomenal maintenance team, and being able to predict, let me just pick School A and School B. Both of them have an aging chiller. They're past their quote-unquote useful life, but our teams are maintaining them. How do you choose between those two buildings? Arguably, they might last 5 or 10 more years, but we didn't have that ability to be able to say when it fails, I need a pot of money to be able to address that immediately. And so that was added. That is a 100% locally funded line item. And if we don't spend it, we then roll that into our limited renovation pot for sort of the next fiscal year. That has been part of our agreement with the county. So it's not lost money. I would love to not use that, but we've had a couple of chillers that we've replaced out of that. And it really actually allows us to maximize every building system until we can get to either a renovation or a replacement.
And then were there any inflationary costs in any of this, or
No.
you're strictly going with what we're getting now, the funding that we're getting now?
Correct. And none of these costs are escalated for inflation either. So it's today's dollars in those out years, so that will likely go up as well. This is another chart just looking sort of at the 60, out through 2055, right? So we're in fiscal, and these are fiscal years, so we're talking 30-plus years from now, but then also looking 30 years behind us where we were from a deferred maintenance perspective. We have had to make some assumptions in those prior years because we don't have computerized maintenance management software data that goes back to 1995. So I highly doubt that we were at $0 in 1995, but never really a good way to get us back and give us a good 60-year evaluation when we look at an estimated building lifespan. So in 2055, with no enhancements, we'll be at about $1.2 billion. I didn't mention it earlier, and yes, that's a very scary number because 1.2 is a billion is a lot of money. Our current replacement value today, in today's dollars, is $3.15 billion. And we talked about that before, but I just wanted to highlight that. We have a large portfolio, and it's been a huge investment by the taxpayers of the county and the state. This slide is intended to kind of show if we had all of the investments that we need in capital renewal, operating dollars, and replacement dollars, we could in 2055 get to almost $0. But that's also not reality. That's not going to happen, and that's certainly not FCPS's staff's request. But I did want to highlight, because I think it's important to understand the National Council of School Facilities sort of identifies optimal funding levels for school construction. We are less than 50% funded for what the National Council would say we would need for maintenance and operations funding. We're about a third of what they would recommend for capital renewal, and alterations and sort of capital maintenance items. We're actually not, we don't really receive funding for those items in any way. In some ways, you could argue that they're cobbled into our maintenance and operations and our capital renewal dollars. Sorry.
Like split it across both, so.
Correct.
Into both.
They're worked in both, but the council would indicate that 7% of your current replacement value is what you should have for all of those functions, right? So on an annual basis. So for FCPS, that would mean roughly $220 million annually just to truly manage our portfolio given best practices. We're funded at about $74 million for all of those functions, right? So a difference of $146 million annually. Again, that's not don't take that as a beg. We think that's where we should be. That is the ideal, perfect scenario of where we should be. But the reality and what this is showing is if we don't see a change in the investment strategy, our deferred maintenance will continue to grow, right? The only way to get to zero is to hit those optimal targets. And so why is that important? I would really like to not be at the $500 million mark for deferred maintenance, but we haven't missed a day of school because of facility conditions, right? Our maintenance team does a phenomenal job. Where we've had to miss school, and you might be saying, I know we've closed a school or two. We have. It's been something like this year in particular, Lincoln A didn't have power. Or excuse me, Lincoln Elementary didn't have power. I can't control power to the building, right? I'm talking physical system issues in our building we haven't closed, right? So there is sort of a happy medium, but with our current funding structure, that number will continue to grow. It's really where is that balance that we can sort of flatline and make that steady and continue to operate and have high quality, high functioning schools for our students and staff. Alex, I don't want to put you on the spot. Anything you want to highlight there from the state's lens and sort of your thoughts and vision on that?
Well, just that there is a sweet spot in there in terms of annual portfolio investment, right, on both the M&O and the capital side. And no district in the state is currently hitting that sweet spot. What that means is that we're pushing costs down the road. They are growing, and they will at some point become fiscally unsustainable. And that's obviously a concern of the state, because the state has a share in a lot of that and always will, and we want to help essentially partner on how to find a way to a fiscally sustainable path sooner rather than later, so that it can remain affordable for future generations. And so this kind of math and analysis is exactly the right kind of work that an LEA should be doing, and not every LEA is doing it. So my hat off to FCPS team and the county for your work and partnership, all this careful, really ongoing, careful fiscal stewardship over the years, doing it the best you can with the resources you have. Appreciate obviously also the support for additional funding from the state level in terms of appropriations, so that we can assist you in doing more. And you know, we'll get there. It just it's a long process. But this is exactly right, and obviously, you know, FCPS has historically had the number 1 or number 2 best rated maintenance in the state, and is continuing to make the very most that you can out of the dollars that you have. But yes, additional inputs are needed from multiple directions. So that sums it up.
Is there a reason we can't fund school construction, future school construction, the same way we fund retirement and OPEB, where we invest and we do an actuarial table so that we know where we need to be when, and we need to be funded at a certain level, and we do it with the same investment strategy that we use for higher ticket items like the 2 I mentioned?
Quick answer is, I don't know.
I'm assuming
But
there's
it's-
some legal restriction why we can't, but I'm just,
We're not funding OPEB at the level.
I was gonna say, I'm more funding any of that at where we should be, yeah.
Probably just the money that we can't find to put there.
But I think, Senator, to your question,
out of the box, because that's the
No.
only way we're gonna get there.
I guess I would argue that maybe this is a first attempt at sort of articulating what that is, right? So to your point on the actuarial analysis of what do I need to fund OPEB in the out years, this is that initial analysis of what that looks like. The only thing we haven't added in,
What it sounded like.
how do we manage growth? So this is all, that's the other caveat I didn't add. This doesn't really talk about growth. This is our existing portfolio. Right, so every time we add to our portfolio, it changes, and it doesn't account for the dollars that are spent on growth. So when we are constructing a brand new school that has never existed before, Blue Heron Elementary, that is now a liability in the out years that if you had asked me this 5 years ago wouldn't have existed, if that makes sense. So it's a constantly changing, but yeah, so. I like the comparison, Senator, honestly. I hadn't thought of it from those terms, but really, I do think this is a step in that direction.
Seemed it to me.
Well, and you also don't have an escalator for costs going up over the course of time, correct?
Correct.
So at this point, it's based on today's dollars, and we know that that changes, because I can remember, and I think you were definitely on the board, April, and I'm not sure if you were, Ken, but the county executive came to the Board of Education in 2015 and did a presentation on what to estimate for your CIP annually. At the time, it was $45 million annually that the county would be able to put towards it. And Paul was just saying that it's now up to $70 million, which means that has practically doubled since 2015. So
So the 70 was also our maintenance and operations dollars. That was the consolidation of M&O funding and the capital renewal.
but I was just saying, like, the costs have really gone through the roof in the last few years. That, we can't keep pace at that level. Just can't. And that is a statewide issue, because we have to look at what are those drivers that are driving the costs up to the degree that they're going.
sadly, we had more cost drivers for, at least in the short term, so, yeah. Okay, all right, well, excellent job. Anyone else have any other questions? Dr. Lebo, great job.
Yeah.
That was really
Excellent
impactful. Thank you.
presentation and data.
Yep. I don't know where you find time to crunch all the data on top of everything, but I appreciate.
Awesome team.
you.
You have an awesome team.
I appreciate it very much.
Team
Correct.
who knows their stuff.
Yes, that is wonderful. So I guess moving into kind of the idea portion. Were we able to think about anything as far as like the grants aspect, the solar charging, or we're just not even able to think about anything like that yet?
We did, I mentioned it to our grants specialist, who is looking for opportunities. There was nothing that jumped out immediately, but we're always willing to continue to explore. And Alex mentioned it a little bit ago with the net zero and the 5% add-on. That's something we examine in every one of our designs. And at some point, I think we're going to reach a sweet spot where that becomes feasible. But some of it, again, goes back to what's the property look like that you're constructing on, right? So can you consider things like geothermal wells, right? We have a history where we have done some geothermal projects, but frankly, we spent such an exorbitant amount of money on those projects, we're not sure that we'll ever see the payback on those because of how expensive it is to dig a well in Frederick County, depending on your, what the geology looks like in that part of the county, right? So Eastern Shore, you can dig a well with a spoon. You need lots of blasting and rock here. So those are the things where it's again, it's not as simple as, oh, can't you just do it? You have to make sure that all of the elements are aligned so you can actually reach and attain that and then get the payback for it on the backside. So any improvements to federal grants would be exceptional. They have almost all dried up. But the state has started some investment in that and then has indicated that there will be more in the future. So continue to explore those.
Have you seen any utility in the Inflation Reduction Act direct pay reimbursement options for energy efficiency improvements for going to the most modern building construction and actually to net zero type systems? Because we've been pulling information from the federal agencies over the last few months that suggests that might be within reach for a lot of school districts.
So
any interest in that yet?
Interest, yes. The quick answer is we have not achieved it yet. However, our board just recently approved through the Maryland Energy Administration. We did take advantage of that grant to have a consultant work with our sustainability team and further explore that and look for not only new construction opportunities, but grant opportunities for existing facilities. So we did take advantage of that grant and hope to have something in late spring, early summer to be able to bring back to our board.
Great. Let me follow up with you later then on the IRA direct pay option, because that is an unlimited pot of federal dollars that can come to any project that has the right energy efficiency components in it. And that is, there's no end of, eligibility on that. It's a tax credit structure. So it's not like a federal grant program that's going to close after 5 years. It may well be something that you could end up pulling $3-5 million from for every project you do going forward, conceivably.
I'll follow up, thank you.
I have all that information available. We shared with LEAs a couple of meetings recently, but it's really a very newly developing opportunity, so happy to help with that.
And we contacted our legislative liaison in the Department of Energy to see if there were going to be, or currently exist any incentives for solar for schools? And they said yes, and we asked if we could get the details for this meeting, and they said they're just finalizing it, but they expect, hopefully by the next meeting, to be able to publicize a program they're developing to do school solar sightings.
Awesome.
That was also a legislative change to make it at least 50% the facility solar ready for new construction for Yellow Springs. Based on that design, very interesting site there as well. But we've actually worked on the ability to have an array not on the roof, because we're actually doing a metal roof there for total cost of ownership reasons, actually, and so we certainly don't want to penetrate a nice metal roof to fit a solar array, but we have the ability to do that on the property if something like that changes. So that's the other thing that we're doing, is looking at opportunities. It's pretty cheap in the grand scheme to do things like conduit and putting that in the ground during construction, and then we can feed it later. And so we're looking to do that on all future projects as well. Let's just do the conduit installation now, even if we can't do either solar for vehicle charging or for power for the building, but do the conduit now and then we can run it later.
Smart. Yeah, to go ahead and do the infrastructure for it. Very smart. There are also a couple work groups that are going on around the state. And so I thought about us reaching out to other legislative members and seeing if they are planning on doing any legislation. Maybe that's something that we could either team up on, or if there was some of the things that they had, that we had been kind of all in agreement about. So happy to do that. I think it's important. I think there's, is there 3 other ones, or just 3 other work groups that are going on in addition? So obviously this is a big problem around the state, not just here.
Specifically on school construction?
They're looking at a lot of public-private partnerships, but yes, it's all on school construction funding and how to mitigate that. Yep. It's what, Howard?
Howard, Calvert, Charles.
I was gonna say Charles and Calvert, I know.
Yep.
And Charles, we were just at our school board, state school board conference, and a colleague from, a school board member from Charles County said something about, as if everybody was doing this, well, we're just adding pods for pre-K to existing schools. And I looked at him and I said, what are you talking about? And he says, well, you're just putting like an addition for pre-K on your existing schools, right? And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And he's like, oh, we're doing it all. Is Charles County doing that? Okay.
Yes, Maryland's districts are taking a whole range of approaches, right? There are a couple that have been looking for pre-K center opportunities. Howard's built.
Howard, yes.
And others that are trying to go more sort of neighborhood school approach by adding a couple classrooms or pods here and there. It really varies. Depends on how much pre-K was already existing. Some were far ahead of others, so.
It's, it comes up as the #1 issue always for every school system, of space and then operation, but space for, and this isn't your thing, but legislation, the balance between public and private, the private just aren't.
Right. Oh,
We're
absolutely.
doing that, Karen, at Hillcrest and at Waverly, because the city just gave us the pod.
Right, gotcha.
Is that what you're thinking? Like, are all the pods like that? Like the one that they're doing? Is it like a prefab?
No, not
kind of thing?
prefab.
No, it's
they're
literally just
custom
doing it
additions.
at custom additions. Okay.
But there's a range. I'm not saying that that's the, standard or model approach or anything.
He just acted like that's what everybody was doing, and I was like, I can't even visualize what you're talking about, and then when I'm like, no, we're not doing that.
And the real problem is no one knows what the real need for pre-K is gonna be, right? It's just, you have to have it, but
We know the need is greater than the space. There would also be the idea, let's get 4-year-olds in and let 3-year-olds, but anyway,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things there.
Well, and we can have those legislative discussions, definitely. It's also, what the turnout will be with the public-private partnerships, and if that, yes,
Right.
that's the part.
That's the
that
problem,
we
you
were
don't know,
correct.
because
Correct,
you have no one has a clue.
right. Yes, it's not
So you build
going
a
out,
project,
it's not coming out the way it was designed to happen. So, okay. And then, did you guys want to talk about the naming policy, or, I mean, we can move that forward, keep moving it forward, or do you guys want to talk about it at all? Is that?
I mean, we certainly can. I can give you a quick summary of, I mean, I think the consideration that we had talked about at the last meeting was whether if we had a generous donor or some type of fundraising, whether we could name portions of whatever after those, and our policy does allow it.
Okay.
We don't name schools after people anymore, but there is a provision in the current policy that,
Unless their name belongs to the development like Windsor, but anyway.
but there, the board will, it's in the policy that the board.
Like, part of it could be named? Okay.
Grounds or facilities.
Grounds or facility? Okay.
That was a change, yes. Quick summary.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, and then any other member comments or anything? No? Okay. And then I think we were trying to think of November 21st as the next meeting is what we were looking at, if you guys want to give me feedback about that over the next week or two.
Yay.
You're available?
Putting it
Yay?
on.
You're good? Okay.
2 meetings, I'm putting it on.
Yay.
Can't do the 21st.
You can't do the 21st? Okay. All right. Yes, so we tried a couple, I think the 7th, Dr. Lebo is tension, out of not, but.
Meeting, I could do it, if we wanted to do an all virtual meeting, I could make that.
I can do
Okay. We can look into seeing what we could do. Do you guys prefer the 7th or the 21st?
Easy.
The one they
Either
started
one?
out with here? Yeah.
Okay.
Either one.
Either one. Do you guys prefer the 7th or the 21st? Do you have any of November?
I believe either should work.
7th.
You prefer the
Whatever
7th?
whatever Alex tells me, that's when I'll show up.
Okay. Aww. That's so nice.
I don't have a lot going on, so that's easy.
Dr. Lee, do you know, is the room available in case we wanted to if you were able to just come in virtually? Or, I mean, would that be, we'd have to do it all virtually because it would be hard to have the space without you here?
I could see if we could get coverage for the room. It is available.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah, great.
I'll send you that
Okay.
presentation, which you'll enjoy.
So this, okay.
So don't we have to have our recommendations in by December?
That's why I didn't want to wait till the 21st. So if we could do the 7th, that would be
Fine.
great. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I'm right about that, right? It's-
Yeah, in December. It doesn't say a date in December, but yes, in
Is that-
December.
Since you did such a good job with the other reports, we're gonna let you do them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Especially while she's not listening.
Yeah.
Well voted.
Yeah.
Anyone second it? There you go.
Delegate Miller, would that be at 6 o'clock as well?
I'm assuming it would be 6 o'clock, so obviously, Senator Folden sent his regrets. He was in Frederick, and then he got called back to Baltimore for work. Yeah, something came up, and he had to go back to Baltimore.
So 7th.
Yeah, 7th, is that 7th? 7th?
And I would recommend that we look at,
The December?
yes.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Okay. All right.
And the only reason I say that is because it's December, it's a
December.
hairy month.
December will
And
definitely,
we have a virtual option.
okay. Did we want to try the 5th? Okay. The 12th? The 12th?
5th or 12th.
5th or 12th?
That's okay if you,
But,
Oh, Mako's the 12th? Okay.
Oh, Mako's the 12th.
Oh, is that Winter Mako?
yeah.
Okay, that could be an issue on the 12th, okay. All right. I guess you can't virtually come in from New Orleans?
I'm at the Council of State
That sounds like about the timing of that. That's great. Okay. Okay. All right. We may have no, although unless, is there a board, or when do you, are you out that whole week then, Ken?
I am out the 3rd to the 7th.
Yeah.
There is not a board meeting of us on the 4th, if that's what you're,
Okay.
the 11th.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking of, for writing a report, I mean, we certainly don't want to wait till like the 19th or anything like that, so are you going to be okay, Ken, if we do it on the 5th?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm free for
Okay.
4th, I guess, doesn't matter.
Yeah, he'll be gone from then on. Because before that, I mean, unless, yeah, doing it the 7th and the 21st of November would be too much to do two. Yes? 2 in November would be bad?
Depends how lengthy the report's gonna be.
Very true.
Janice, how lengthy is it?
How lengthy?
You didn't know you were voluntold.
I think it would be better than December, and then we could even do something virtually in December that would just be to approve the draft, if we can get that way. Okay. I mean, really, December will be.
The CIP.
Because I haven't heard an alternate.
You've got winter Mako. Okay, so we're gonna try then the 7th and the 21st of November, and then if we do anything in December, we'll probably just try to do it virtually then, because it would just be approving a draft. Okay? All right, that will work. Okay, and
The 7th, I think we should have virtual options.
try to have virtual options on the 7th, okay.
And anything after the 7th.
Yeah, and we always try to if people let us know, yeah. We were able to do that when Alex needed to. So.
Except for the storm hitting.
Except for that tornado and the storm and everything that was going on that night, that was insane.
Very convenient on your
So,
part.
yeah, I think, yeah.
My flat tire.
All right, and then do we have any public comment?
It was well timed.
That's right.
Okay, no public comment, all right. And we adjourned. Thank you, guys.